Essex, England, as usual. And it's been very, very hot in this country. But we're all enjoying it. It's what we call an Indian summer. All the beaches here are packed because England is not used to this sun and lovely warm. They usually get the planes that go flying off to the Med somewhere, Mediterranean. But now apparently they're staying at home. Anyways, thank you very much for tuning in. Please please ask your questions. We'll do our best to answer them. Now the market has been churning around, as you can see. It has overall been showing some weakness. And if you look at the daily chart, which we might do later, you can see there was no demand at the top. And on that no demand, it's drifted off. Now the chart we have up on the screen at the moment is a 30-minute chart of the mini S&P 500 future. And there's no specific reason why I've got this chart up. You can look at any chart. Sometimes one chart will hold a little bit more information than others. But this is a 30-minute chart. And I've left it up because there seems to be a few principles that have appeared here. Now, I know I apologize telling you this, it's easy to see these principles in hindsight. But if you learn to recognize them, then when they appear in the future, you'll also recognize them. And you get so used to it, jump in the trade. Now, this is obviously here. I'll put the cursor down here, look. This is a principle here. And that was what Wyckoff, all those who studied SMI teachings, is what he called a springboard. But in reality, it's a shakeout, come test. It's specifically designed, the people that are professional in that trade know perfectly well they've been buying over these bars, look. Right, they know perfectly well. I believe if you look at different time frame, you'll see some stopping volume there on that red down bar. Right. Now, you don't buy in a red down bar, but you wait for a test. Or in this case, we're looking for shakeout. So it goes, it's a 30-minute chart. So it's 1 hour. So 2 hours later, right, suddenly the market's down, falls down, right. However, it reverses rapidly, closes on the high, and on that, it produces an automatic signal. And there we are. Basic test. But really, I was speaking to Peter about it. No matter what you call it, you call that a test, but it's a shakeout. It's designed to shake people out of the market that may be long here. They may be smart enough to have gone long, or they may be trying to encourage you to go short, which some people do when the market falls. There's a host of reasons, not to mention the trigger and all the stops. So plenty of reasons why they have this and why we call it a shakeout. A confirmation, next bars, up rapidly, look. Okay, and the market moves sideways on that. So you've got that principle here. Behind you, you can see definitely, and you can recognize that. It's fairly obvious, isn't it? As a shakeout. You can visually see it. Okay, so it got a little sign of weakness, no demand on that bar. That's all right. Okay, so it's down, look, volume's low. I can't see it very well, but it must be low. Right. Every time you get a red down bar, it's low. Right. Little bit of hesitation here. Now here it looks like there is some bit of selling going on there, perhaps. Marked it up, blue bar, close in the middle, but the very next bar they mark it down to test it, and it's fallen, it closes just off the low. Look, the volume is not excessive. On that they turn around and they mark it down again. Look, now this here, as they mark it down, will put the fear of God into you if you happen to be short or long. And if you look at it at a different point of view, there's not a lot of difference between this here and this. It's a shakedown, and that's why they do it. They do that for the exact reasons why they've done this. Look. But gradually you learn to recognize that, and you will go along with the trade and not be fearful, and you'll be pleased that you can read it. Don't forget, a chart is a language speaking to you. It's a chart telling you things. I mean, we know here, this is what this chart told us, that there's definitely buying here. Look, they've had a definite shakeout. They're coming up. The markets are not designed to help you. They're going to whipsaw along like this to destroy people in the various positions. Okay, so the market turns around on the fact is there's not a lot of selling, and up it goes. Now, admittedly, the volume is high, look. And there was some selling there, look. Right? And why is it selling? Because the markets don't like this very, very high volume on these up bars. Right? It's closed in the middle. Also, there is some selling there. So we're warned about that. Right? Although the very next bar is marked up, look. And then we have a red down bar. There's not a lot of selling pressure, but there is some supply now in the background. Now we can't short that. We can't go long on that. There's no obvious principle that I could point out to you to tell you to go long or short on that. I know the principles are easy to see in hindsight, but over time you'll recognize them. Now, before we look at something else, is there any questions about this particular chart? It's a 30-minute.
Okay, hi everyone. So on this particular chart, B. Roman asked or said, at 11 o'clock you said it was selling. Would you please explain? So 11 o'clock bar is this one here, Tom. Yeah. Why did you say that was selling? Over to you.
What's the signal say? Yeah, supply, look. You see, why did I say it was selling? Because to my eye, it looks like a bit of selling, right? And the professional money would see that, and that's why they had this apparent shakeout on this bar here, which I've said look very much like this here. But admittedly, it's not all that obvious. But the computer has picked something up, look. Computer's not all that happy with it. Computer ranks there's a bit of supply there. As I say to Gavin, ignore the signals at your peril. Because the signals are written when you're cool, calm and collective. You won't be in a trade. You're just figuring out exactly how these markets work on supply and demand. And that's what you come up with here. It's gone up widespread, look. Now, admittedly, the volume is not all that high, but relatively it is. You see, look, if I could do this, look, if I could move this,
if you look at the volume, that's 2 or 3 times higher than the previous one.
yeah, Peter's looking at it, you can see better than I can. But you know, they're not too worried about it. And you should not be too worried about that. You're aware of it because why? Because you've got this in the background. This here is a very clear principle. They were buying there and then they had a deliberate shakeout. And you see there's been several red down bars on the way, and each one's got low volume. So they're busy testing the market. And I think I've always told you that if you ever see a red arrow appear, look, that one, what's that? Supply. But it's immediately tested, especially next bar, look. Down bar, the spread's fairly narrow. Yeah, it's closed in the middle. They're just testing the market. And the volume should be low. That's a very strong sign it wants to go up. So we've seen that frequently now, many, many times the last few weeks. We get red arrow, and you've got the reason why you say, right, it's going to be tested next bar, and that is a bit of supply or no demand coming in, is this. In the background, this makes the market relatively strong. That has not disappeared. Those professional traders that moved into the market and then had that shakeout are there holding their positions. Okay? Are there any more questions? Hang on.
Thank you, Tom. Just as you were talking there, Eleni typed in, ignore the indicators at your own peril, and by chance you happen to say that 1 second later. So Eleni's either got special powers or she knows what you said before. So that's quite right. Tom does say that quite a lot, that you ignore these indicators that come up, the red ones or the green ones, at your peril. So in other words, we're not saying you should trade off them, but you should certainly pay attention. If they were perfect, you could trade off them, but it's impossible to be perfect. So thanks for that, Eleni. Now we've got a request to look at, I think it was corn from Eleni as well. So corn, Tom, could you give your view on this corn future?
Right. We don't normally follow commodities. It's very dangerous because they've got this rule that sounds as if it's made for the protection of the ordinary trader. It's not. It's called limit up, limit down. And that's designed for the help of the professional floor traders, not you. And you can get locked into a trade, so be careful. Okay, so look at this corn. They're obviously, okay, first of all, the market's fallen. That makes it vulnerable to the possibility of professional money out there thinking they can make some money by buying into the market, taking it up a bit. Right? It's usually seen as stopping volume. Now, this here on the surface looks like stopping volume. But is it? I'd say no. That is a sign of weakness. A widespread down, as it rushes down, close on the low, on increase in volume, you have to be careful, because normally that's a sign of weakness. And it's the vulnerability of the market's not there, look. Don't forget, it needs to fall fairly substantially before professional money decide to move in. It hasn't fallen enough, right? Because there's plenty of other opportunities for them. Okay, so there's there's a little bit of volume here, look. Right. Volume has reduced somewhat. They've marked it up, look. But there is supply on these up bars, look. And that's the red down bar, and there's definitely supply present there, look. Right? Professional money see that. So next bar, although it's up, it's no demand, look. I would personally, it looks as if it's whipsawing a little bit sideways. I personally wouldn't touch that because I can't really see there's enough substantial stopping volume. It's not vulnerable enough to, for example, cause all the so-called weak holders in there to be shaken out. And there is supply present. Markets work on supply and demand. And you've got too much supply here, look. Very high volume on these up bars. Markets don't like this very high volume on these up bars because that's supply hitting the market, and that's why it's come off. And what's this even here, this? Looks awfully like a attempt to upthrust you. Now, admittedly, it's come down, and it looks almost like a sign of strength there. Now, it could be, but on this evidence, I would not see there's enough strength or potential buying for me to be interested in that, to go long on that, or even short. But I would strongly advise you to do nothing, turn the page, unless you can see an obvious principle at work that you can rely on. And they'll automatically appear to you given enough time. And once you learn to read these charts, you can, I can look at a chart. I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but I can. Look at the old chart, and I can tell you whether it's strong or weak within, 3, 4, 5 seconds. And then if I was teaching people on it, I would look at it more carefully and weed out the more smaller principles. But even here, as I look at it, that looks suspiciously like a top reversal, which is a sign of weakness. Up bar, volume's too high. A red down bar, look, where the close is lower than the previous bar. That's what we call a top reversal. It's a sign of weakness. Okay, so they gapped it down. They've gapped it up, look. It looks suspiciously like an attempt to upthrust or no demand. Now, admittedly, that particular bar there looks strong. But I want far, far more evidence before I could put a trade on that.
Thanks, Tom. As a matter of interest, Eleni, who asked you to look at that commodity, said that she shorted around about here. So must have seen the high volume. So Eleni has been looking at Wyckoff or VSA for some time, I suspect. Perhaps that could be confirmed. But the weakness was seen here, presumably. And we're still in, but possibly covering, maybe. Okay, so we've got plenty of questions here. So there's a question here from Kumarisa. I hope that I've pronounced that correctly. And the question is, Tom, what's your outlook for Monday? So that's a good question. Tom?
What's my outlook for Monday? Right, now I've been thrown in the deep end of the pool. Now the only answer I could do, I'm not quite sure, to be quite honest, because I haven't really studied it enough properly. Now I do a newsletter. What day we do the newsletter, Peter?
Well, this week, I'm not sure because Rita is away.
Rita's on holiday down in Somerset at some health camp. Well, she needs, I don't know. But
so it's possible we might do one on Monday.
So we may delay the newsletter till Monday. But we, well, Peter, he'd have to type, and he's a one-finger job man, where Rita could look round the ceiling, type with two hands as fast as you can speak, which is absolutely amazing. It's always amazing me that. So that's why she types the newsletter. But if you want to know what's going on next week, what I would tell you is that Monday is a very, very important day. Look at it very, very carefully. And if it tests, right, then you'd expect the market to go up. If it went up on no demand, you expect the market to go sideways or fall. But I will put quite a bit of effort into looking at the chart, daily chart, which I based my decision on, and put it in the newsletter. But if you listen to this seminar, it may, see, it's Friday, that's the problem. And they get up all sorts of tricks Friday to throw you off the scent, to mislead you. Not just you, but other professionals. And also, they like to get opinions and that up on the TV, money programs and the newspapers and magazines, all designed not for your benefit, but for theirs. So you've got to be very, very fishy, suspicious of the Action Friday. And because it's early in the day yet, I can't give you a definite, it's going to go up or down, but we'll look at it. Okay?
Thank you, Tom. So another question here. This is from TP King, and the question is or it's kind of a statement, on July the 3rd, this is the chart we're on now, July the 3rd is that no demand looking bar, kind of no demand, I suppose. Is that no demand, so there is still supply in the market? Tom?
Well, no demand tells you that at that moment professional money is not interested in high prices. Now, there is some sort of, you see, the problem is that before you expect professional money to step into the market and absorb or buy, then surely the vulnerability's got to be good. Now, if you sit in your house, right, and the guy next door is selling, right, but he comes down a few $1,000s, you may not be interested. But if he comes down with a huge discount and you know about it, you may very well be interested. And that goes the same thing in the market. Markets have to drop, become vulnerable to attract professional money to move into the market. And simply that hasn't really come down enough here. You need about at least another leg, I would have thought, down. But that's just no demand. All right, so they're not interested in higher prices. Now they may want to test the market, which looks as if they try and do here. But be very, very careful with commodities.
Okay, and now we got a question from Chris. Dear Tom, I always get confused if I should stay in a single time frame or keep switching over. Can you please give me some pointers?
What's that game, please?
I always get confused if I should stay in a single time frame or keep switching over. Can you please give me some pointers?
Well, you see, I mean, it doesn't matter what time frame you're looking at. The overall strength and weakness will be apparent in that chart. I mean, I describe it as if you're a doctor in a hospital and you're assigned to a patient who's, say, cholera or something, right? He's pretty ill. Now, it doesn't matter how often you check on that patient. In other words, what time frame you're using, he's still going to be ill until the point is reached where he's actually disease is controlled or annihilated or whatever. And then it's different then, because now the doctor can then look at it a different way. But the market's the same way. You could look at any of these time frames. I guarantee if you look at this commodity we're looking at now, no matter what time frame you look at, it will tell you a similar story. The short time frames are a little bit useless, I think, you know, like 1 minute, 5 minutes, because you haven't had time for anything to happen. But if you've got, like here, a 30-minute chart, and it's obviously weak, you can look at other time frames, but it's not going to tell you anything more. It's just going to confirm what you've already know or seen.
Okay, so just going to switch back to what's going on now. So when you were talking earlier about this chart, Tom, that's a 1 hour chart, by the way. Some questions came in, I think, about that. So Alex was saying at the time, does the volume dropping off but going up at 1400 versus the period right before, is that a bad sign as the stock moves up? So we're looking at this one here now. Yeah, where you are now. So I'll read that question. So does the volume dropping off but going up at 1400 versus the period right before, is that a bad sign as the stock moves up?
I don't fully quite understand the question, but markets don't like this ultra high volume on these up bars, right? And don't forget, in this particular chart, you've still got this sign of strength down here, which we looked at in the 30-minute. It's still there, look. That's what I mean by these different time frames. They bought, went sideways, look, for several hours, look. Then when they were ready to move, they rammed it down, catch stops, put the fear of God into people that were the wrong side of the market, catch stops and all this, and then took it up. But here, I mean, there is definitely high volume here. So there was definitely a bout of buying and selling going on here.
Can I add to that question, Tom?
Yes.
So while Tom was speaking there, Alex has added to the question and says, to be a little more clear, as the price goes up and the volume drops off, is that a bad sign?
Sorry, what did... Yeah. Well, it's not a healthy sign. It all depends what you've got in the background, because what you're describing is no demand. Now, we've got a signal here. Look, what's this say, Pete? See, I thought it was. So you have exactly what you're talking about here, look. All right? And I say, ignore the signals at your peril, so be careful. All right? But the reason it's gone up there is because of this here, look. This is the reason, this is the principle, fairly obvious one, of why that market went up there. It's whipsawing up and down. The market's not there to help you. It's a very tricky place to be. As you can see, they love to trigger stops. They love to shake you out. But that's how they make their money. Now, we've got no demand here, exactly what you were talking about, look. And the spread's even narrow. We've got suspiciously like a up thrust. We've got this high volume on up bars in the background. So certainly not the place you want to go long on. Now, if I'd bought on the low there, I'm sorry, I know it's easy in hindsight to see all this stuff. But if I had bought there, I would have bought there if I'd been watching it. I wouldn't like this at all. I would be out.
So still on the same chart, Thomas has got a question. I think this refers to this chart, but anyway, how can you tell when there's been enough cause for the market to turn around?
How can you tell when there's enough cause to turn the market around? Well, when there's enough, it's pretty obvious. If this market was now wanted to fall, then you'd expect to see very high volume on up bars, the spread's narrow, up into possibly fresh high ground, gone sideways as they're selling, distributing more, and then you might get what we've just seen here, no demand up move. And if you keep in your mind, the market without question moves on supply and demand. And if you see up bars on very, very high volume, especially if the spread suddenly narrows, and especially if it's up into fresh high ground, then you must recognize the fact is that somebody is selling. And if the professional money is selling, they won't be supporting the market. Don't forget, they maintain higher prices, but they may sell, yes, but they also have to support the market. So it can sell more on every wave up. Or one group of professionals see another one selling. So they think, right, we better sell. So we'll support the market. So the next wave up will start selling ours as well. Does that make sense? It's pretty obvious if you look.
Thank you, Tom. While you were talking there, Sean typed in a statement, sounds like basic volume divergence. Now, I'm not sure what basic volume divergence is. It sounds like a form of oscillator. But, Tom, what do you say to that?
You have to explain your view of what you call volume divergence. I have looked at it. I have heard about it, obviously. Well, that is a divergence, isn't it? So you're right. But you really, again, you have to be like a doctor. You look at your patient And you can't put your complete diagnosis on one observation, like, oh, his pulse is too fast or his temperature is too high. It's a general observation as a trained doctor that you look at your patient. And there's not one thing, it may be several subtle things, all sorts of things you're looking at, which an untrained person would not notice. You know, doctors look at the color, the pulse, perspiring, history, and everything like this they're looking at. The output of various parts of your body, and so on and so on. And that's how you look at these charts. But don't get daunted, because if you stick with it, it'll all fall into line. It's like when I first started to play bridge years and years ago, I remember. I sat down at the table and there was what they call 100 tables, you know, with people. And I didn't have a clue what was going on to start with. I was busy learning as I went along. But gradually I got better and better and better. And you'll do that with these charts. And you do nothing unless you see a clear principle that you understand. Then you go in and trade it. Otherwise you're going to lose money. They're just enticing you into a market where, because of the devious way the market behaves, and you'll be losing. It's most peculiar. I'm trying to think of, I'm going to do a study in my mind on why these charts behave the way they do, if it's all possible. Most weird, some of it. But I know it's definitely based on supply and demand.
Okay, so Dirk has asked for a German stock. Unfortunately, Dirk, we don't have any data like that. Perhaps we will one day, but we don't have any now. So sorry about that. We've only got the US end of day and some futures, etc. So, what else we got here? Right, so this is from B. Roman again, and this is on this question about shakeouts. So I'll read the question. Is part of shakeout depend on the low price rather than on the closing price?
Well, the key principles of a shakeout is that in the background, right, they appear to be buying. In other words, you've got a down bar somewhere in the background where the spread has narrowed, increase in volume, right, which we call stopping volume. And that's the main criteria. And then if the bar is marked down rapidly, okay, that triggers off all the stops before you can do much about it. It panics those people that are long. There's a lot of traders there, oh look, it's falling, I'm shorting, and so on and so on. But basically, it shakes out the market, shakes out people on the wrong side of the market, and but you must have the background. They must be shaking out for a reason. Don't forget, we work on facts, if possible. We don't work on any mathematical formula or anything, patterns, nothing like that. Once you learn to do that, see, it's a language speaking to you, this chart. And the language is written to you in the high, low, close of volume. Now it be specifically see it, read it, to go and trade on it all the time. But when you do see an obvious principle appear, like we have on this chart on the low there, then you should take it. And you find many VSA traders say, good ones, say, oh yeah, well I saw that. But I just hesitated and waited to see if it was right or not, and bang, they marked it up next bar rapidly, and then I thought, oh, I can't trade it now, I've lost the move. And so you're up against your own personal failings as a trader. And that's just one of the reasons why it's difficult. Not only learn to read the market, right, but to react to it as a professional trader.
Thank you, Tom. We've had some questions come in about today's movement on some stocks. Unfortunately, we just don't have that data, so we can't have a look at that, so I'm sorry about that. Someone asked about Google and Pfizer, I think. So sadly, we don't have the live data. Now we can look at the NASDAQ in terms of the futures, because Paul has said, could you please take a look at the NASDAQ for me in view of the recent earnings miss by the big boys, INTC and Microsoft? So let's have a look. So let's look at the hourly chart of the future for the NASDAQ. There you go, Tom.
This is daily chart of NASDAQ. Oh, it's a 1 hour. Right. Well, we've got signs of weakness right at the top here to start with. One. And that one. You've got widespread down look on very high volume. Well, that's technically wrong, but it's a sign of weakness. If ever you see a widespread down, right, on increasing volume, there may be a little bit of buying there, as it pushes through a former area of support, which is here, look, is a potential sign of weakness, and that's pretty obvious. Professional money would have seen that. Next bar's really up on no demand, down, down. This, to me, looks potentially weak, and I certainly wouldn't be interested in going long on this NASDAQ.
Okay, thank you, Tom. There's a comment here from a comment and question from B. Roman. Tom, you expressed your dislike of 1-minute charts and regarding time frames in the previous question. How does individual trader deal with computer HFTSs, not sure what that is, by the pros in the ES market, and where is good data source for volume?
What was that again?
You expressed your dislike of 1-minute charts.
Well, I don't dislike 1-minute charts. It's just a case of preference. Can I use that data? Or is it going to react too fast for me? I don't dislike it. It's quite interesting. What's the rest of it, Peter?
Just wondering how the individual traders deal with that, the pros in the market.
Well, each professional has his own way of doing things. But don't forget, they know, like if you're dealing with individual stocks, the specialists know exactly the position because they're the ones specialized in the buying and selling of it. So they can do all sorts of things, and they don't have the pressures that you or I or so-called non-professionals have thrown at them. Anything else?
Just asking, where is a good data source?
Well, don't forget, data, as supplied by most of these vendors, is adequate for us because we use relative volume. So they can dabble and mess around with the volume figure as much as they like. But it's highly unlikely they're going to mess around with it so much that it distorts the picture as far as we're concerned. Because we don't go on exact numbers. We don't care about whether it's 5 million or 6 million. All we're interested in, relatively speaking, is it high or is it low? And that usually is fairly obvious on these charts.
Interestingly, I actually do look at the 1 minute charts from time to time. If the market's moving sideways, and I don't trade it, it's entertainment, often you'll see very high volume coming in on one bar. And if it's in the right place, it does mark a change in direction, albeit a small change because the market's going sideways. So there is information in all the time frames. But Eleanor's just mentioned here, looking at the bark of the tree doesn't allow one to assess the forest. So, people have their own ways of trading, and I bet you there are people who do trade on 1 minute charts. But the thing about them is you have to, in my opinion anyway, is you do have to look at the wider time frames, because the 1 minute is the 1 minute. So more questions, requests. So here from Bruce. Hi Bruce. Will we look at oil as in the contract? We will. So I haven't seen you for a while, Bruce, on the system. So hi to you. Tom, this is oil.
Is it day, daily? Right. So here we have a bit side of weakness, folks. No demand. The very next bar is tested, look. And there's no selling pressure. Just as I was telling you on the previous chart we were talking about. Whenever you see these red arrows appear, I mean, another one there, look. Right? No demand. And the very next bar is tested. And look at that low volume. There's no supply. And that's why it went up, look. Then there's another go. No supply, look. When the computer colors that volume pink like that, then you know there's no selling pressure. That's why it's gone up, look. It's interesting. Seems to work better when you've got a clear red arrow, look. And this is crude oil, is it? There's no reason to say that market stopped going up. That market is an uptrend, and it looks as if it still wants to go up. However, if you look at these charts, this chart, and suddenly you get very, very high volume and up bar, then you know supply has hit that stop. And if you've got long position, you're better off out. Until it, so you don't get locked in some shakeout or bear move of some sort. But right now, there's nothing on that chart to tell you I'm going down. Now, could you check on the KG chart? Double check. I strongly advise you, is that all green? Now, look at that. Yes? Now, that's what we call a KG chart. Now, all the time those bars are colored green, right, it's bullish. And this tells you whether the volume in that daily chart is bullish or bearish. It can't come off all the time the volume's bullish. Doesn't matter how much they try to fool you, how many lies they tell you, or how they try to mislead you, which they will do. All the time those bars are green means the volume is bullish. Bullish volume is expanding volume on up bars while decreasing on down bars. That's why you get tests. Bearish volume is expanding volume on down bars while decreasing on up bars. That's why you get up thrust and no demand. But right now it's bullish volume, look. So you certainly wouldn't be interested in shorting that or even selling a long position. That market as you can see even from the daily chart, but check this KG chart. It's very, very good.
Right, so we look at gold next. We will look at also the 5-minute futures for Mark. Thanks for being patient, Mark. Before we go, so gold. So we had a couple of requests there from Jennifer and Alex.
Right, gold. This is end of day. Now Gavin loves to talk about this gold chart, and last week I was telling him this gold looks as if it wants to go up. He was arguing that it wouldn't, and so on and so on, because he was looking at gold. I'm not saying I was right, which I was, but he was looking at too long a time frame. The gold works on supply and demand, just like everywhere else. I mean, there's been a down move, look. There's the stopping volume. Right. Okay, it's even a signal there, look. Test, right. Then test. And there's another little test there, and the volume on that one is low, look. That is a beautiful test in the rising market, look. Narrow spread, clearly down, close on the high, and clearly very low volume. Low volume tells you that the selling that was here, look, you can see has disappeared. And that's all the professional wants to know, that there's no supply to swamp his up move, and that's why it's gone up, look. Now, funny enough, there's a red arrow, and again it's a test, look. And again, it's a successful test. And they're testing that red arrow, look. And that's why it still looks buoyant. To stop that gold, you're going to have to see very high volume and up bars.
Okay, thank you, Tom. So, what other questions we got here? Bear with me. So, this is a long question, Tom and everyone, but I'll read it because it's quite a good one. This is from Dirk. So, in his webinars and videos, you talk about equivalent volume. Now, I think actually I'm wondering whether when you say equivalent volume, you mean relative volume. Just correct me if I'm wrong there. Talk about relative volume. You want to see at the end of the actual rising market. By this you mean the volume at the bottom, accumulation on the one hand, and at the top, distribution on the other hand. As we do not see this volume, you predict higher prices. So this sounds logical, but how do we know that the rising market must end with a big bang volume? The smart money could throw out their holding bit by bit into the rising prices so that we do not see high volume at the end. Why are you so sure?
Well, admittedly, professional money will do whatever they can to sell their holdings that they bought lower prices. Don't forget this old saying, there are no friends in the stock market. Other professionals, they don't love each other. They probably hate each other's guts or dislike them, jealous of them. And they're not going to see one group or person making money out of it. They can help it. So they are devious. They will do all sorts of tricks. I mean, when I was working in Beverly Hills, we would instruct the floor traders to sell openly during the day, but made sure we bought it all back overnight. So you can't believe everything. And but you can believe the charts. It's relative volume. And I keep telling you the market does not like very high volume on up bars. The market likes very low volume on down bars.
Two last charts. So we'll look at two more charts. The first one will be the weekly of the ES, in other words, the future for the S&P. And the chart we'll finish with after this is a 5-minute on the same instrument. So Tom, that's a weekly. Have you got any comments on that? Weekly of the S&P future.
Well, you're a doctor looking at your patient, right? And you see the same thing. I mean, look, just what we've been talking about. There's the red arrow, trap up move. Professional money see that, so they say, okay, we'll test it, right? So I've just told you that on at least 2 charts a day, and that's why it's gone up. Look, see, we can prove to you what we tell you is the truth. We're not lying to you. We don't lie ever. We don't try to exaggerate anything. We don't have any secrets that we don't tell you. There's no need to, right? But if you see that and the computer throws up a signal of strength and it goes up, it shows you that what we tell you, it must be actually what's going on. Interesting. There's even one here. Look. And don't forget, this is a weekly chart. No demand. And there's your test. But that's a weekly chart. Okay. That's a contrast from a weekly, bang, down for 5 minutes. What? This is live, is it? Right, so it's gone up there. See, I haven't been following this one. Looks like a bit of weakness here. Markets don't like these up thrust like this. And if it's strong, why is it taking so long? I need to look at a daily chart that comes with an assessment of that. There's nothing obvious to me at the moment. That's definitely going up and down in the next 10 minutes or something like that.
Yes, actually, I've been looking at the 5-minute chart on and off today during the session. I sometimes actually scalp it, unbeknown, I think, to Tom, because Rita's normally here looking at the questions, and I'm sitting looking at my computer, scalping, doing the odd one if I see something. So I'm not like burning desire to take a trade, but if I see something, I'll take it just to get 10 points. I won't stay in too long because I've got to pay attention to what's going on with Tom and Rita. But today there's nothing because it's all a bit sideways and a bit choppy. It all seems a bit, you know, if there's a sign of weakness comes in, it's followed by a sign of strength, all that kind of carry on. So not for me, thanks. And if you look at also the market the last few days or so, so each chunk of volume here represents a day. This is a 4-hour chart. You can see it's kind of been sideways all week to some extent, probably tradable in some time frames. But the 5-minute, good luck, especially at the moment. So with that, thank you very much for everyone coming along. The newsletter, we plan to do it on Monday, but we do have to check with Rita. Rita's away, as Tom said. She's usually quite amenable to that, so may well do it on Monday, so I'll be a bit late, unfortunately. So with that, we'll see you next week, and wish you all a good weekend. And we will post the newsletter on Monday if it's going to be done, but we're only 99% sure. So from Tom, goodbye, and Peter, and we'll see you all next week.